The city was bustling with its usual chaos. Honking cars, chattering pedestrians, and street vendors calling out their wares. Among the crowds, Matthew Chandler, CEO of one of the country's largest tech companies, walked briskly in a tailored suit, his mind already filled with the relentless pressure of meetings, deadlines, and corporate decisions. Success, he knew, came at a cost. Long hours, few personal connections, and a constant sense of responsibility that rarely left him alone. He preferred it that way. Relationships, attachments, they complicated life. He had long accepted that. And yet, today, as he moved through the downtown plaza, something unusual caught his attention. A small voice shouted across the street, clear and urgent, "Dad!" Matthew turned, annoyed at first, thinking some child had gotten too close to traffic. Then he noticed her, a little girl, no older than 5, standing near a fountain, her tiny hands gripping a colorful balloon. Her eyes were wide, innocent, and fixated on him. She called again, "Dad! Dad, come here!" Matthew froze, heart pounding for reasons he didn't understand. He glanced around, expecting to see a parent rush forward, scolding the child for running into the street. But no one moved. The plaza was bustling, yet she seemed utterly alone, her small voice cutting through the noise. The first instinct of the CEO was to ignore it. He had no idea who she was, and a stranger calling him Dad in public was awkward, if not alarming. But something about the urgency in her voice made him pause. Something familiar, comforting even, stirred in a part of him he had long buried, curiosity mixed with a rare protective instinct. He approached cautiously, keeping his hands visible, his voice calm. "Hey there," he said gently. "Who are you looking for?" The little girl's eyes lit up. "Dad, I need you," she said again, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and worry. She looked at him with complete trust, as if he were indeed her father. Matthew's initial irritation melted into confusion. He bent down to her level, carefully studying her small face, the curls framing it, and the balloon clutched tightly in her hand. "I think you might have the wrong person, sweetheart. I'm not your dad." The girl's lips trembled. "Yes, you are. Mommy said so. You're my daddy." Matthew froze, unsure whether to laugh, panic internally. But as he looked at her, something shifted. The innocence, the pure belief that he belonged to her. Something primal stirred in him, a protective urge he hadn't felt in years. People around them began to take notice. Smartphones appeared, capturing the moment of a little girl calling a suited man dad in public. But Matthew was only aware of her wide, trusting eyes, and the sincerity of her words. "Sweetheart," he said carefully, "I really don't know who your mommy is. Are you sure you're looking for me?" "Yes, Mommy said you would come," she insisted. Matthew's mind raced. Who was this child? How did she think he was her father? And yet, he couldn't deny the strange, warm feeling that bloomed in his chest, a sudden awareness that his life had been missing something far more important than wealth, meetings, or success. He sighed, realizing he couldn't just leave her there. "Okay," he said gently, taking her small hand. "Let's figure this out together. Can you tell me your mommy's name?" The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Mommy's name is Anna, and she's in the building with the big glass windows." Matthew followed her gaze and saw a modern office building not far from the plaza. He frowned. His instincts told him to be cautious, but her trust in him was palpable. There was no fear, only certainty. As they entered the building, Matthew asked, "Anna, is she a friend of yours?" The little girl shook her head. "She's my mommy. She said you were coming to see me, but she couldn't make it." Matthew's mind spun. He was a stranger. He didn't know this child. Yet something told him that this encounter was no coincidence. He had always been meticulous about timing, planning, and control, but this was chaos he couldn't manage. And strangely, he welcomed it. When they reached the reception desk, the girl tugged on his hand and said, "Mommy said you'd know what to do. She said I could call you Dad." Matthew blinked. He glanced down at her, noting the innocence, the trust, and the way she looked at him as if he were exactly who she needed. Something inside him stirred, a longing he hadn't recognized in years. The life he had built, full of accolades and boardrooms, suddenly felt hollow compared to the small hand gripping his, the voice calling him Dad. The receptionist, a young woman in her 20s, approached. "Is everything okay here?" she asked politely. The little girl chimed in immediately. "This is my daddy, he's going to help me." Matthew froze. He hadn't expected the world to be watching, to judge, or to question. Yet the conviction in her voice, the pure certainty, made him feel responsible. He nodded carefully. "We're fine, I'm just helping her find her mommy." The receptionist exchanged a glance with the security guard nearby. "Oh, she's talking about Anna, the new client on the 15th floor," she said softly. "She often mentions her dad. But that's just imaginary." Matthew's heart skipped. Imaginary? This little girl had called him Dad in public. Was she lost, confused, or had something more complicated happened? Before he could ask, the girl tugged his hand and said, "Come on, Daddy, Mommy is waiting." Matthew realized in that moment that life had a way of confronting him when he least expected it. Wealth, power, and control hadn't prepared him for a little girl, 5 years old, who trusted him completely in a world of strangers. As they rode the elevator to the 15th floor, Matthew noticed the plaque, Anna Harper, Family Law and Child Services. The realization hit him. This little girl wasn't just lost in the plaza. She was lost in her life, navigating a complicated situation, and she had chosen him, random stranger, CEO, and busy man, as the one she trusted most. Matthew looked down at her. She looked back, eyes shining. "We'll find your mommy," he said gently. "I promise." And at that moment, he didn't know it yet, but his life, as he had meticulously built it, was about to change forever. The elevator doors opened onto the 15th floor, and Matthew stepped out cautiously, the little girl's small hand still clutching his. The office was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The receptionist led them down a hallway to a spacious office, where a woman sat behind a polished desk, reviewing paperwork. "Anna Harper?" the little girl called out, her voice full of excitement. Anna looked up, startled. Her eyes softened when she saw her daughter, who immediately ran into her arms. "Sweetheart," she exclaimed. "You're okay. Oh." She glanced at Matthew, confusion and curiosity mixing on her face. Matthew cleared his throat. "Your daughter seems to have mistaken me for someone else," he said carefully, smiling gently. "But I promise I helped her get here safely." Anna nodded, gratitude and relief flooding her expression. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here." The little girl looked up at Matthew with wide eyes. "Mommy, he's my daddy," she insisted. Matthew's eyebrows rose, and Anna chuckled nervously. "Well, he's certainly a very kind stranger," she said. "But let's clarify that he's not your real dad." Matthew knelt to the girl's level. "Hey, sweetie," he said softly. "I'm not really your daddy, but I'm glad I could help you today." The little girl frowned. "But I needed a daddy. You're big and strong and nice." Matthew smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. He realized that in just a few minutes, a small human being had unlocked emotions in him he didn't even know existed. The corporate power, the meetings, the relentless schedules, they all felt distant compared to this tiny hand holding his. Over the next few days, Matthew couldn't stop thinking about the little girl. He returned to his office, sat behind his massive desk, and stared at the skyline through the glass. Everything he had built, his company, his empire, his meticulously organized life, suddenly felt incomplete. He had wealth, influence, and power. Yet here was a child whose trust and innocence made all of that seem trivial. Curiosity turned into action. Matthew reached out to Anna, explaining that he wanted to help in any way he could. "Your daughter trusts me," he said. I feel a responsibility to ensure she's safe and happy. If there's any way I can support you, please let me know." Anna hesitated, unsure whether to accept assistance from a stranger, no matter how powerful or kind. But the sincerity in Matthew's voice and the concern he had shown her daughter persuaded her. They agreed to work together, navigating her daughter's needs while keeping the child's well-being at the forefront. As they spent more time together, Matthew learned about the girl's situation. Her mother was a single parent struggling to balance work and childcare. There had been misunderstandings, miscommunications, and moments of fear that left the child feeling uncertain and anxious. Matthew's presence, his calm confidence and protective demeanor, offered stability she hadn't known before. The little girl, in her innocence, began calling him Dad more often, sometimes in public, sometimes in private. At first, Matthew corrected her gently, but over time, he realized that the title was less about biology and more about trust, comfort, and the safe space he provided. He started adjusting his life. Meetings were rescheduled, travel reduced, and he carved out dedicated time to spend with the little girl, reading stories, playing in the park, and even helping her with small school projects. The transformation wasn't just in her, it was in him. He discovered joy in the simplest moments, a shared laugh, a hug, a hand to hold, that his business acumen had never afforded him. Friends and colleagues began to notice changes in Matthew. He seemed calmer, happier, more engaged with life outside the boardroom. Yet he remained cautious, balancing his responsibilities while stepping into this unexpected role. The little girl's mother, Anna, saw the shift too. She observed how Matthew's influence extended beyond her child's life. He became a source of guidance, support, and stability in ways she hadn't anticipated. One evening, as they walked through the city park where it all began, the little girl tugged on Matthew's hand. "Daddy," she said, her voice small but insistent, "will you stay with me?" Matthew looked down at her, heart sweet. He realized that staying didn't just mean being physically present. It meant embracing a new dimension of his life, one that was richer, more meaningful, and profoundly human. "Yes," he said softly, "I'll stay with you." That night, Matthew sat alone in his penthouse, reflecting on the day. His life, once defined by contracts, meetings, and deadlines, now included laughter, trust, and the pure love of a child who had, in her innocence, changed everything. He understood something profound. True wealth wasn't measured in money or power, but in relationships, trust, and the capacity to care for someone else unconditionally. A little girl had called him Dad in public, and through her simple belief, he discovered a part of himself he had long ignored. And he knew, with a certainty he had never felt in the boardroom, that his life would never be the same again. The following weeks were a balancing act for Matthew. His days were filled with board meetings, investor calls, and strategic planning, yet each evening was reserved for the little girl who had so unexpectedly become a central part of his life. He had named her Emily, and the moment he heard her giggle as she ran into his arms after school, he realized that corporate triumphs paled in comparison to these simple, genuine moments. At first, Anna was cautious. She had been protective of Emily, wary of letting a stranger, even a powerful CEO, enter their lives. But Matthew was patient, consistent, and reliable. He didn't impose, he offered guidance, support, and stability. Slowly, Anna began to trust him, observing how Emily's eyes lit up whenever he was around. She saw the little girl blossom with confidence, her laughter freer, her fears eased. Matthew also began to notice subtle changes in himself. The rigid schedules, the endless pressure, and the solitary nights in his penthouse gave way to routine walks in park, bedtime stories, and playful games in Emily's living room. He discovered joy in preparing meals, helping with homework, and even indulging in small, childish antics just to see her smile. His colleagues noticed a softer side to him. a patience and warmth previously hidden beneath his authoritative exterior. One Saturday morning, Matthew accompanied Emily to the local library. She was eager to show him her favorite books, tugging his hand with excitement. As they wandered through aisles of colorful covers, Matthew was struck by her curiosity and hunger for knowledge. "Daddy," she said, pointing to a shelf, "can we read this one together?" Matthew smiled, lifting the book from the shelf. "Of course, sweetie. Let's see what adventures await us today." They found a quiet corner, and as he read aloud, Emily nestled against his chest, hanging on every word. In that moment, Matthew understood that this wasn't just about providing guidance. It was about presence, attention, and love. He was no longer just a CEO. He was someone Emily trusted and relied upon, and that trust was transforming him in ways no business deal ever could. Meanwhile, at home, Anna began to confide in Matthew about her challenges. Single motherhood was a constant struggle. Balancing work, finances, and the emotional needs of Emily left her exhausted. Matthew listened without judgment, offering suggestions, helping organize schedules, and sometimes simply sitting quietly, providing reassurance through his presence. "You've made her so happy," Anna said one evening, her voice tinged with relief. "I wasn't sure how she'd react to someone new in her life, but you've been amazing with her." Matthew looked at her, feeling the weight of the responsibility he had voluntarily taken on. "I didn't expect this either," he admitted, "but I can't imagine not being part of her life now. She's changed me." Anna smiled, a mixture of gratitude and understanding. She needed someone who could be constant, patient, and kind. "You've become that. I can see how much she trusts you." As the weeks passed, Matthew's bond with Emily deepened. They created routines, weekend trips to the park, evenings baking cookies, and quiet mornings reading stories. Emily's laughter echoed through his penthouse and, eventually, Anna's apartment as well. He began attending parent-teacher meetings, helping with school projects, and even negotiating small issues with empathy and patience he had never applied in his corporate life. Through Emily, Matthew learned humility, empathy, and the profound impact of unconditional love. The once solitary CEO found fulfillment in the simplest acts, tying shoelaces, holding hands, and being a constant presence in someone's life. It was exhausting at times, but the exhaustion was joyful, meaningful, and deeply human. One afternoon, while helping Emily with a school art project, Matthew noticed a drawing she had made. It was a picture of him, her, and Anna, standing under a bright sun, all smiling. Written in crayon were the words, "My daddy." Matthew felt a lump in his throat. He knelt beside her, his voice shaking slightly. "Emily, this is beautiful. You really think of me as your daddy?" She nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, you're my daddy because you help me, play with me, and make me feel safe." Matthew's eyes filled with tears, but he held them back, choosing instead to embrace her small hand. "I promise, I will always be here for you," he said softly, "no matter what." That night he reflected on the journey, a chance encounter in a bustling plaza, a mistaken identity, and a simple act of trust had opened his heart in ways he had never anticipated. He realized that love, trust, and family weren't things that could be planned or scheduled. They were lived, moment by moment, through actions, care, and presence. At work, Matthew's transformation was noticeable. Colleagues commented on his newfound patience and attentiveness. Decisions were still sharp and calculated, but he now considered the human impact of each choice more deeply. He had become a leader not just in business, but in life, a man capable of empathy, understanding, and connection. Even Emily's teachers noticed the change. She seemed more confident, happier, and secure. Her laughter was freer, her curiosity boundless. The little girl who had shouted "Dad" in a crowded plaza had brought stability and joy to both their lives. And as Matthew tucked Emily into bed each night, hearing her soft, trusting voice call him Daddy, he understood something fundamental. A single act of connection could transform not only a child's world, but also his own. By now, Matthew had fully embraced his role as a father figure to Emily. Each day brought new joys, small victories, and occasional challenges, but he approached everything with a sense of purpose he had never known. Work still demanded him, but he began delegating responsibilities more efficiently, trusting his team to handle details that once consumed his every waking hour. Time with Emily was no longer a rare indulgence. It was a priority, a commitment that grounded him in ways money or power never could. One morning, Emily tugged him by the hand into the living room. "Daddy, can we go to the park and feed the ducks?" she asked, eyes bright with anticipation. Matthew chuckled, ruffling her hair. "Of course, sweetie, let's go." At the park, Emily ran ahead, squealing with delight as she scattered breadcrumbs for the ducks. Matthew followed, smiling quietly. People recognized him in passing. He was a public figure after all. But today, he didn't care about their stares or whispers. All that mattered was Emily's otter, the pure joy she radiated, and the sense of belonging they shared. At home, Anna watched the interaction with a mixture of awe and gratitude. She had seen the transformation in both her daughter and Matthew. The little girl's confidence and happiness had blossomed, and Matthew's demeanor had softened, infused with warmth and patience. "You've become amazing with her," Anna said one evening as they prepared dinner together. "I never imagined anyone could step in and make such a difference." Matthew smiled, washing a plate in the sink. "I didn't imagine it either. She's changed me more than I could have expected." Anna nodded, realizing that Matthew's presence had not only stabilized Emily's life, but it also introduced a sense of family and connection that had been missing. She began to trust him completely, seeking his advice on parenting challenges, school issues, and even small household matters. Together they formed a partnership rooted in respect, care, and the shared love for Emily. Challenges did arise. One afternoon, while Matthew was attending a high-level corporate meeting, Emily called him in a panic. She had lost her favorite doll at the park. Matthew's heart sank. He excused himself from the meeting and rushed to her side. When he arrived, Emily was in tears, clutching a small backpack. Matthew knelt beside her. "It's okay, sweetie. We'll find her together," he said gently. They retraced her steps, searching the park with determination. Finally, under a bench near the fountain, Matthew spotted the missing doll. He handed it to Emily, who squealed with joy and hugged him tightly. That evening, as they returned home, Matthew reflected on the day. In the boardroom, decisions affected thousands of people, often with numbers and data as the only metrics of success. Here, in the park, success was measured in laughter, trust, and relief. He realized that these moments, seemingly small, were the most profound measures of a life well lived. Word of Matthew's involvement in Emily's life spread quietly among his colleagues and friends. Some were surprised. A CEO known for his ruthlessness now seemed to prioritize a child over business deadlines. Yet those who truly knew him noticed the shift, a gentleness, an attentiveness, and a joy that hadn't been there before. One evening, Matthew hosted a small gathering for family and close friends. Emily ran around excitedly, showing off a craft project she had made with his guidance. Friends and colleagues smiled, charmed by her energy and the evident bond between them. "Matthew," one friend remarked quietly, "you've changed, and it's clear why. She's lucky to have you." Matthew looked at Emily, playing with a new friend she had made, and felt a swell of pride and love. "I think I'm the lucky one," he replied softly. As weeks turned into months, Matthew's life transformed in subtle but profound ways. He began adjusting his schedule to allow for bedtime stories, park visits, and weekend adventures. Boardroom decisions were still made with precision, but he approached each one with a renewed sense of perspective, considering not just profits and metrics, but also human impact. Emily continued to call him Daddy without hesitation, and Matthew embraced the title wholeheartedly. he understood that fatherhood wasn't defined by biology alone. It was defined by presence, care, and unwavering support. Anna and Matthew's partnership strengthened as well, evolving into a foundation of trust, respect, and mutual admiration. Together, they created a nurturing environment for Emily, one filled with stability, love, and the kind of connection that shapes a child's life forever. One afternoon, as they walked through the plaza where it had all begun, Emily tugged on Matthew's hand. "Daddy, do you remember the first day we met here?" she asked. Matthew smiled, kneeling to her level. "Of course, sweetie, you shouted Dad and I had no idea what was happening." Emily giggled. "You still didn't know, but you came with me anyway, and now, you're my daddy for real." Matthew hugged her tightly. "Yes, I'm your daddy, and I'll always be here for you, no matter what." He looked around at the bustling city, the people moving quickly through their lives, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. One small moment, a child's mistaken belief, had unlocked a new purpose, a new joy, and a new understanding of what truly mattered. Spring had fully arrived, the city bathed in soft sunlight. Matthew walked through the plaza holding Emily's hand, her laughter ringing out as they skipped over the cracks in the pavement. People glanced at them, some recognizing the CEO, others simply noticing the joy radiating from the father-daughter pair. For Matthew, these moments were priceless, a contrast to boardroom victories and stock market triumphs. It had been months since that fateful day when Emily had called him Dad in public. Since then, his life had been transformed. He had embraced the role wholeheartedly, balancing corporate responsibilities with the deep, nurturing commitment of a father figure. Anna's trust had grown as well, and together, they created a home for Emily filled with warmth, laughter, and stability. One afternoon, Matthew received an invitation to a corporate gala. It was one of the most important events of the year where industry leaders, investors, and media would be present. Normally, he would have attended alone, focusing on networking and strategy. But this time, he decided to bring Emily and Anna with him. The gala was opulent, a glittering AF. Fair filled with chandeliers, fine wines, and impeccably dressed guests. As Matthew entered the room holding Emily's hand, whispers traveled through the crowd. Cameras clicked, and the media noticed the unusual sight. A CEO, renowned for his corporate ruthlessness, walking proudly alongside a little girl who called him Daddy. During the speeches, Matthew was called to the stage. With Emily and Anna by his side, he addressed the audience. "Tonight," he began, his voice steady, "I want to share something personal. Life is full of plans, schedules, and goals, and I've always been focused on those. But sometimes life gives you a reminder of what truly matters. A little hand, a trusting voice, and a simple word. Dad." He paused, looking down at Emily, who smiled up at him. "This little girl reminded me that love, care, and presence are more important than any success I've achieved. She taught me what family truly is, and for that, I'm forever grateful." The audience was silent for a moment, struck by the sincerity and depth of his words. Then, applause filled the room. Colleagues, investors, and strangers alike recognized the transformation in him, and more importantly, they saw the impact one small child had on a life that seemed already complete. After the gala, Matthew, Anna, and Emily returned to their quiet apartment. Emily yawned, sleepy but happy. "Daddy, did everyone hear me?" she asked, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Matthew smiled, lifting her into his arms. "Yes, sweetie. Everyone knows now that I'm your daddy, and I'll always be here for you." Anna watched them, her heart full. "You've changed him," she whispered, "and you've changed her too. Together, you've built something wonderful." Matthew nodded, holding Emily close. "It's not me who changed," he said softly. "It's her. She reminded me what life is about. The weeks and months that followed cemented air bond. Matthew became a constant presence in Emily's life. attending school events, helping with homework, and sharing in every small joy and milestone. Anna continued to trust him implicitly, knowing that he had become more than a friend. He had become family. Publicly, Matthew's image shifted as well. The media began to cover his philanthropic work, his dedication to family, and the unusual but inspiring story of a CEO transformed by a child's innocent trust. He had achieved a rare balance, maintaining his corporate success while embracing the emotional fulfillment of fatherhood. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the park, Emily stopped and looked up at him. "Daddy," she said, "thank you for being my dad. You make me happy." Matthew knelt down, holding her small hands. "And you make me happy, Emily. You showed me that life is about love, trust, and being there for each other. That's what matters most." Emily smiled, hugging him tightly. Anna joined them, and together they stood in the fading sunlight, a small family bound not by blood alone but by trust, love, and the transformative power of one simple moment. Matthew realized with quiet certainty that life's greatest victories weren't won in boardrooms or measured in profit margins. They were won in hearts, in laughter, in love. A little girl had called him dad in public, and in doing so, had changed his life forever.